Hello, good evening, panelists. How are you?
Good evening.
Can you all
Hello,
hear me
good
well?
evening.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just gave the Facebook crew about 25 minutes of some nice hot salsa to get them ready for this panel. So we welcome the Facebook audience, also those who will be coming on and joining us here live on the Zoom. Let me just turn this down. Right, so joining us live here on Zoom, and those will be joining us live on Facebook. And of course, this panel discussion is being recorded. Just to let you all know, it will be recorded, and you will all have the link to distribute as you wish, to save and use for future reference. And it would also be stored on my YouTube channel so that everyone could see what we discuss or hear and listen to what we discuss for the Hispanic Heritage Month 2023 panel, Latinas in America. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. I tell you, I've been celebrating Hispanic heritage ever since my days in Brooklyn, New York. With the Puerto Rican Day Parade and, the Colombian Day picnics and family get-togethers. And, so Latina culture has been in me for many, many years. So, over the past few years, I've just taken upon myself to host different panels and discussions on various cultures within Latin America. And I'm thanking you all for joining us here tonight for this panel. When we look at Hispanic Heritage Month, it's a great opportunity for us to recognize the contribution of Latinos in America. The Hispanic community is large. It is vast here in the United States of America, over 63 million Hispanics here in America, and in Georgia, slightly over 1 million Hispanics in Georgia. And when we look at the Hispanic purchasing power, almost $2 trillion in purchasing power in the Latino community. So it's a significant community. The Latino contribution to America and to, the economic growth in America is significant. The political influence is significant. So we definitely want to recognize, all of our Hispanic brothers and sisters who are celebrating and observing Hispanic Heritage Month. Yesterday, I had a great opportunity to walk around and visit different Hispanic businesses in our community here in Lawrenceville with one of our officers, Captain Salvador Ortega, who is of Mexican descent. And it was just great, visiting the various businesses in Lawrenceville with him. I still have some more businesses to visit. But, I just thank you all, for joining. And it's really good for us to, dive in and have a discussion on Hispanic heritage and what, what it is to be, Latino, or what it is to be a Latina in America. We have some wonderful ladies here joining tonight. And my name is Austin Thompson with Thompson Management Consulting. And, my love is just sharing knowledge and experiences, whether it's business, whether it's political, with my community and with the community at large. So tonight we're going to learn a lot about these ladies who are joining us tonight. And we have some folks coming in. So I'll be admitting folks as we go through the panel. So right now, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and start introducing. I'm a believer on starting on time. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading the bios of our esteemed panelists this evening, Latinas in America, and you all will be great and you will be excited to learn a lot about these ladies, all right? So first, I want to start off really briefly. I'm not going to go through the entire bio, but I'm just going to summarize it a little bit because I really want to get into the meat of the discussion, okay? So first we have Brenda Lopez Romero. She's an attorney, former Georgia State House representative, and she's the current chair of the Gwinnett Democratic Party. Brenda is of Mexican descent, and she resides here in Gwinnett County. Brenda Lopez Romero is a senior assistant district attorney for the Gwinnett Judicial Circuit, leading the Justice and Community initiative. Brenda was the first American Latina elected to the Georgia General Assembly, where she sat on the Education, Retirement, and State Planning and Community Affairs committees. She is the chairwoman for the Gwinnett County Democratic Party and is a rising star in Georgia politics. She was awarded, she has worked over 20 years in the legal and political advocacy of immigrants and low-income communities. Formerly, she was a principal attorney handling removal defense and immigration and nationality matters, right? Brenda holds a law degree from Syracuse University with a national security and counterterrorism certificate and a bachelor's degree from Georgia State University in political science and sociology, the first Latina elected to the Georgia House of Representatives. So we definitely representing Mexico and representing our Latinas in America. That's right, Ms. Nury. That's right. And as we stay on the political contributions of our esteemed Latinas on this panel, I want to introduce you to a great friend of mine, the Honorable Marlene Taylor-Crawford. We call her Marlene the Queen Taylor-Crawford, representing Cuba. And Marlene is a councilwoman for the city of Lawrenceville, the first Latina elected to the city of Lawrenceville as a councilwoman. So we definitely have a lot of firsts in our county and in our state of Georgia. We definitely want to recognize them. So Marlene Taylor-Crawford is unwavering in her commitment to serve. And that she is. Yes, indeed. Marlene has pursued her love for community service and education throughout her life, investing more than 20 years of community service in Gwinnett County. Marlene has worked in the New York City Public Schools, DeKalb County Public Schools, and currently in Gwinnett County Public Schools. Most of her educational career has been as a school counselor. She focuses on the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion, DEI, for each person to have a sense of belonging and thrive to their fullest ability. Marlene has a Bachelor of Arts in psychology from the City University of New York, as we call it, the CUNY system, City University of New York, York College, Master of Science in School Counseling from the City University of New York, Hunter College, Master of Science in Educational Leadership and Human Services from Nova Southeastern University, and an Educational Specialist degree in Instructional Leadership from Nova Southeastern University. So we want to welcome Ms. Marlene Taylor-Crawford, Marlene the Queen Taylor-Crawford, the Honorable Marlene, a City Councilwoman, the first Latina elected to the City Council of Lawrenceville. Definitely a significant influence in the Hispanic community and also for young Latinas looking for examples and inspirations from our leaders. And now we have Ms. Nury Castillo Crawford representing Peru. And Nury has a very extensive bio, so I'm gonna try to capture all of it in a summary. And, you know, I hate to summarize bios because these bios really showcase the extensive experience of our panelists. So I feel like I'm doing a disjustice or an injustice to trying to summarize these bios, but they're going to be on the website, b2bconference.net. So, you know, anyone can always go back and read the bios and see exactly who these panelists are or were, depending upon when they look at it for our panels, all right? So Ms. Nury Castillo Crawford has a positive track record of being a transformational leader with over 25 years of experience in the public education sector. Her journey as a leader in education has included collaborations with community stakeholders in order to maximize resources and information for the students and families she advocates for. She has been a teacher, a school administrator, and a district level leader. Nury is originally from Peru and immigrated to the United States of America when she was a young girl. She values education, knows that it is an important variable in ensuring the success of our country's youth. And as I stated, of course, being examples for the young people in this country, right? Nury is also an entrepreneur and uses her vision to support literacy around all around. As a bilingual Latina, she is the proud owner of 1010 Publishing, a small press in Georgia that disseminates about 5 bilingual books annually. Excuse me. She recently opened the Little Book Spot, a multilingual bookstore in Metro Atlanta, along with a brick and mortar free literacy. Both entities were created to increase access to literacy and literacy-related resources with an emphasis in bilingual and bilateral books that reflect biculturalism and pride in ancestry and culture. So thank you, Ms. Nury. Thank you for joining us this evening. We definitely appreciate, what you will contribute to the discussion on this panel. Certainly, last but not least, we have Rosemary Rodriguez. Ms. Rosemary, I didn't know where I put your bio, but I can say one thing about Ms. Rosemary. She represents Puerto Rico. She is a very astute entrepreneur. I had the pleasure of literally working on her business plan and discussing her entrepreneurial endeavors. She is in the mortgage space. She's also an event planner, and she's also soon to be launching a dry bar hair salon for women. She is very active in the entrepreneurship space and definitely represents Puerto Rico well. So welcome, Ms. Rosemary, and thank you so much for joining us again. So with that said, we're going to jump right into the panel questions and to learn a little bit more about who we have in our panels. And I really want to start off with Ms. Rosemary, since I don't know where I put your bio, and excuse me, but I really want to start off with you so that you could tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and just so that we can get to know you a little bit more.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I am
your
grateful
microphone.
that you. Let me see.
All right. Can everybody hear her? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Ahead.
Okay. Just wanted to say thank you for having me on here. Actually happy you didn't have my bio, because then that means that I get to speak for myself. So yes, I am all the things that you've mentioned. I am also a salsa bachata former dance instructor. So that actually led me into everything that I am. I am a mom of 3 boys. Had my son when I was 17 years old, so I was a teen mom. And let me see. I want to say the first thing is basically I'm from New York and I live in Georgia, not because I chose to, but because my mom lived here, and New York was very expensive for me. So it wasn't something that was convenient as a single teen mom. And Puerto Rico was where I ended up, and that was more convenient financially for me, where I could just pay $300 for a month for a whole apartment. So that sums it up. But thank you.
Yeah. So tell us about, you're a bachata dancer, bachata and salsa.
Yeah. So I started off dancing, taking dance classes, and then I ended up teaching how to do couple dances for weddings and for bridesmaids for their first dance. They usually do like a surprise dance. Then that caused me to become a wedding planner, and then I started my own event planning business back in 2016, and did that for a few years. After that, I moved into, during COVID, 2020 happened, there was nothing, like all social activities gone, no dancing, gone, social activities gone. So I was literally done. And so I ended up getting into the mortgage industry, and that's where I decided that I'm going to grow me as a person in the mortgage industry. And I started learning how to do branding and teaching, instructing, and that and more me. It built me to become better.
Right. And as an entrepreneur, as a Latina business owner, it's really significant. We talk about almost 63 million Hispanics in America, residing in America, and we talk about 1 million, slightly over 1 million in Georgia. It's significant, and you are an example. You are a significant, just example in the Hispanic community, building businesses, not just a business, but businesses, right? In the mortgage lending, in the event space, now in hair and beauty that you're about to launch. And that's really significant because a lot of young Puerto Rican ladies and Latinas will look to you as an example. They say, hey, I want to do what Rosemary is doing, right? I want to, follow her and use her as a yardstick, for me growing my own successful business, right? And that's really great.
Yeah, I hope so. That's kind of like the bigger picture to what I'm doing, honestly. Especially like I said, because I had my son at 17 years old, I want to be able to have this as a platform so that I learn all the things I need to learn so that I can go back and then help guide the young ladies that were in my situation that didn't know how to do the things that I didn't know how to do. Luckily, there's more information out there than there was when I was a teenager, but it's still to a point where they're still not aware of it. I didn't know about buying a house until I turned 30. And so for me, that was a big step, because before that, my parents, we lived in New York in a townhome, and then we moved into Long Island, and in Long Island we actually had our actual house. And I was about 9 years old. But you don't talk to your kids about, houses back then. Now my kids, I have a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old. They know about housing, credit, they know about everything. And they're now preaching to their friends about what they should do when they turn 18, or how they should build their credit now using their parents' credit, if their parent has good credit. So I think it's, slowly but surely improving.
Okay, great. I want to get in. We'll come back to you in a bit, because I know you have to run to another meeting. So I want to come back to you about Hispanic home ownership and the importance of that. But we're going to come back to you and address that, because I know you're in that space, and you'll be the authority to really speak on that. All right. So Miss Nury from Peru, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're so glad to have you and have your input and your contribution to the discussion. Yes. So what I want to ask you is your thoughts on being a Latina in America and the importance of celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month as a Peruvian.
Yeah, so being a Latina in America, definitely I feel like anybody else, I don't try to, as an educator and as a leader, as a mother myself, I definitely try to stay away from the victim mentality of anything, right? Including the challenges that come, the barriers that come with being a Latina or a brown person in the space. I try to think of ways to bridge, to help others learn, and at the same time celebrate and elevate my own community without having any kind of indication of not celebrating other people, right? Because my train of thought has always been that because my light shines doesn't mean I can't help yours shine as well. So I feel like the cultures, different cultures, we can all learn to love ourselves and learn to love our own communities, and at the same time love others and respect others' cultures and communities, right? We can walk and chew gum at the same time, basically.
Yes, ma'am.
And so for me, that's very important, right? I don't like adding to that mentality of like, oh, all of the barriers. Yes, we had a lot of barriers. You know, I came to this country and I was monolingual and I only spoke Spanish, and my parents, you know, sacrificed a safe, loving environment for myself and my siblings, and they did. And so helping others see and celebrate that and overcoming and perseverance, I think is very important. And so for me, that's important as a Latina, and important for me to help others, especially the children, and be the adult that I needed when I was their age.
Right, right. And Ms. Nury, you said something very important. You know, living the life of a Latina, right, as a woman of Hispanic heritage, and not playing the victim role, right? And how does that play into one not actually capitalizing on their full potential to really grow and flourish as they should, you know, capitalizing on their potential, playing the victim? How does that play into it?
Yeah, because and sometimes I feel like, you know, because I try to stay out of the judgment zone too. Sometimes it's not, people don't do that intentionally. I do want to highlight that, you know, because all of us understand that self-esteem is way more than half the battle in life. When you are uprooted, whether it's a choice, personal choice or not, from your home country, and not only is the culture and the language different, but also the educational system, which is the world that I live in, is also different in this country than others, then you are apt to start feeling some kind of way, you know, like maybe I don't know enough, I need to assimilate more, and all of those self-conscious things come to mind, and that is natural. Those things just happen. It would happen to the best of us. But helping our children and ourselves too, but our children see the strengths that come from being a Latino, and from being and having the cultural norms and the cultural assets that come from being from a specific country, or even from, you know, Puerto Rico, which is part of the US, an island, but it's still considered, you know, of Latin heritage. So for me, it's helping our children understand what they bring to the table, and how being bilingual and biliterate, right? Being able to read in both languages, and having the amazing asset of being bicultural is such a huge thing. You know, I always tell parents when I meet with them, people that have financial means pay for their children to learn another language, pay for their children to go and study abroad. Like if you have financial means, then you will invest in your child's future by providing them more additional and more background knowledge experiences, because we know that the more background knowledge experiences one person has, the more you can score even higher in aptitude assessments and norm reference assessments, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, so the contributions to those types of experiences and knowledge base definitely attribute to success. And so I tell parents, you know, that come from our home countries, like, at least that is what we have. Like, don't give that up, right? Don't allow other people's narrative of you should speak English, or we don't understand your accent, or whatever those things that they have, those issues that they have, don't allow those to be your issues. And don't, for goodness sake, like, don't allow that to seep into what you are modeling for your own children. Exactly. I mean, we at least have a second language, and we at least have another culture. So like, for me, it's like, how do we capture that, and how do we instill strength and pride in having those assets? And yes, work better, you know, work harder at acquiring the second language, which in this case would be English, and trying to perfect that, because we know we do need to speak that language. And yes, and learning about other cultures, because that's just amazing to learn about other cultures. So for me, it's really like capturing what we bring to the table, owning it, being proud, and simultaneously work on the things that we need to grow on, because every single human has areas of growth. And so that's our areas of growth.
Exactly. That's great. Thank you so much for that. And now we'll transition to Marlene the Queen Taylor-Crawford, the Honorable Councilwoman from Lawrenceville. And you know, Lawrenceville, the city of Lawrenceville as a municipality, celebrated its 200th birthday, December 2021. And in the 200-year history, no Latina has ever sat on the city council until the election of Marlene Taylor-Crawford. And we welcome her tonight, and we thank her for joining us. As she serves a dual culture. She is Cuban, Jamaican, you know, and so I definitely want to highlight that. But since we're in Hispanic Heritage Month, we'll focus on the Cuban side of Councilwoman Taylor-Crawford. And Councilwoman Taylor-Crawford, I just want to ask you, as a Latina elected to the Lawrenceville City Council in its 200-year history as a municipality, how proud are you of that accomplishment? What does that mean to you?
Okay. Well, first, I want to say thank you so much, Austin Thompson, for having me here with these esteemed young ladies. I'm so proud to be in the midst of this greatness, and I actually know two of them, so hello. And Brenda, I'm going to see her next week. We're going to be at the same event. So to answer your question, of course I'm proud, but at the same time, I'm disappointed because why did it take 200 years for that to happen? So being the first, yes, of course, but certainly not. I do not plan to be the last. So, because I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure that there's representation. So.
That's great. And thank you so much. And we definitely recognize this great accomplishment when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the city of Lawrenceville receiving an award, a DEI award. We definitely want to acknowledge the importance of increasing the inclusion and the diversity on the city council as well as in the city.
So if I could just add some information. So
yes,
actually both of my parents were born in Cuba, but my mother left Cuba. You know, her parents took her from Cuba to Jamaica at a very, very young age. So back in the late 1920s, 1930s, Cuba and Jamaica had a very close relationship. So it's not uncommon to meet someone that's living in Jamaica, but they have Cuban heritage.
Right.
So I'm a product of both countries, but I was actually born in Brooklyn, New York. My parents came here in the 1950s, and they met in New York City, in Harlem, New York, to be exact.
That's right.
So I was raised with both cultures and having delicious food from both countries, beautiful beaches. I wish I was at a beach right now. So I'm very proud of my Cuban heritage. Yes.
Right. And as someone who shared an upbringing in Brooklyn, New York, we know how strong the Hispanic influence is in New York.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You live in New York, you can meet people from all over the world.
Yes.
And that's what the world looks like, that diversity. So I would not change that for anything in this world. Yes,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And thank you so much for your leadership. And thank you so much for your activism. It is very much appreciated.
And if I can just quickly share a picture, I have to pay homage to my parents. They're no longer alive. But if you can see my mother, my father, it's kind of hard to see.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
Also, I'm gonna show you some really old pictures. This is my grandfather.
Oh, wow.
He was born and raised in Cuba. And my grandmother born and raised in Cuba as well.
All right.
So I always give thanks to the ancestors and to the shoulders that I stand on.
That's right, because much of what is comprised of your character as you know, as a Latina, as a woman in politics, woman in business, woman in education, actually stems from your grandparents, your parents, and what has been handed down to you. So that's
and
great.
I'll tell you a little bit about my father because he was definitely a major influence in my life when I have the time. But now it's Miss Brenda Lopez.
All right. Miss Brenda Lopez. The first.
Hi, Councilwoman. Pleasure to be here with you.
That's right. And you ladies, you see, I got my poncho on, so I got this in was it? It's either Cozumel. it was either Cozumel or it was another part of Mexico I was in on vacation, and I got this. And I got this in 2019. I've only worn it like 3 times. So I said, tonight will be the 4th time that I'm wearing it, in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. So I feel really great about that. So we have the first Latina elected in the Georgia House of Representatives, and Miss Brenda, the Honorable Brenda Lopez, she's now, she is a practicing attorney, but she's also the chair of the Gwinnett Democratic Party. So what was it like, the first Latina elected to the Georgia House of Representatives? That has to be significant for you and for Latinas and your family and for those looking to you as an example and as an inspiration. What was that like?
Well, maybe I'll echo a little bit some of the sentiments that Nury mentioned. So for me personally, at the very beginning, it was rather uncomfortable. That was what I ended up calling the tagline. Because being of Hispanic background, particularly being of Mexican background, is just sort of like a place of birth and cultural upbringing, things that I connect to family values, but it isn't necessarily an accomplished goal, right? I just happen to have been born within this community. And so for me, what was significant about my election was being able to connect with people, to be able to go out and talk to what we call low propensity voters, people that either vote very infrequently or don't vote at all, and being able to engage them and provide education about why it's important to be involved in campaigns, which ultimately leads to those who are elected. And so, I took value from being able to share that information with communities, not just the Latino community, but a lot of immigrant communities, particularly, as you mentioned, New York. Gwinnett County is a very good example of somewhere else where we live and can meet everyone from anywhere in the world and have food from anywhere in the world. And so that's been sort of how I've utilized the fact that I was the first Latina elected in the General Assembly, to be able to connect it to individuals that might not have just my direct affinity, but that have an affinity that where they feel unheard, or they feel that they're not part or should not be part of the political process. And for me, that's where I've gathered the most inspiration. Over the time, I've become a little bit more understandable, if not comfortable, with the tagline, only because I do see, and I did see, especially for our younger generations, the need that we constantly see, right? It's hard for young people, particularly that don't come from backgrounds that are already rooted in the political process or in the legal field, to think that they can do that if they don't see someone that they can identify with, and whatever that is, whether it's because I'm a female, whether it's because I am of Hispanic background, whether whether it's just generally an immigrant background. So over the years, that's become, I've understood more and more why that is important in itself. Particularly, like I mentioned, for a lot of the younger generations up and coming. In fact, during my first legislative session, I had a teacher reach out from, a little bit surprised. I'm like, for sure, they would have other people they could talk to where they don't have to talk to me. But nonetheless, right, that we were able to like zoom into her class, and I was able to share information about what it was to be in the state legislature, even though I was speaking to people out in Bronx and I was here in Georgia. So that's how I've been able to be inspired by the fact that I've had the privilege to serve in our state legislature, and that I can bring my ethnic and racial background as a positive factor.
No, that's great, because, as we aspire to do great things and stand out in the spotlight, we are going to be identified as, people of interest, for folks to want to bring further out and to talk with folks. And, I've been in Georgia now for 31 years. I've been in the Caribbean community as a leader for, over 25 years, volunteered with the Latin America Association now for 16 years. It's been a great experience, and meeting, people of Hispanic heritage from different backgrounds. And it's just great because, through limited Spanish and limited English, you can still communicate and find ways to connect and engage. And you learn so much about, what it is like to be an immigrant in America and grow up and come from our backgrounds. And as Latinas, we all know that in your respective countries, it's normally male dominated, right? So when you're in America, now you have more opportunities to spread your wings and flourish and become more of an example or symbol of excellence, right? And to do the things. Do you find yourself, being put in a position where you are an example to young Hispanic girls that are looking to probably be in the political space and be an attorney?
Yeah, definitely for young ladies. And that is very true, because even though perceptually we think that in the United States there's a lot more opportunities for women and gender equity issues, including pay, slowly, but has definitely improved and comparable to other countries, we're in a better situation. But the reality is that particularly in the legal world, and then of course, then when I ventured into the political world, it is also still very male dominated. And so, I've grown up always since I was a young girl interested in the legal field and being an attorney. Before I knew what on earth that meant, I went into understanding some both actual barriers as being a woman, but also some of the more undertones that comes with being a woman and having to learn to project your voice, having to learn to repeat yourself and be firm when you're not heard and you're not listened to, especially when you're in a group of, again, in both of my areas of work that are very male dominated, you have to assert yourself. And those are things that I had to learn over the years since I was a young lady. And so that is sometimes a lot of the conversations that I have with young ladies and questions that I frequently get about, what do they do, or, they feel this way. One of the things that I constantly also hear sort of this idea, and I don't like the term, but this idea about they feel not in the right place, what they call imposter syndrome, right? And I've had that being asked of me, and unfortunately, I can't say that I ever perceived myself in that way. I never perceived that I didn't belong in a place, because we belong everywhere. And we belong anywhere. And that's sort of the message that I usually try to say, right? We are usually far more qualified than any of our male counterparts that might be in a group. But at the end of the day, the reality is that when we talk about that context, most men don't wake up in the morning wondering if they are qualified enough, right? They just wake up. And I think that, one of the things that I talk a lot with the young ladies especially is just that we just have to wake up and know that we're going to do what we want to do and do our best. And quite frankly, that in itself will probably be far more than anyone else in the room.
Right. So we've got a long way to go to really, accomplish true gender equality in this country. Definitely. Rosemary, I'm coming back to you because I know you have to leave us in a little bit and miss the party. But I know you're a very busy businesswoman. You have a business meeting you have to get to. But I want to get back to Hispanic home ownership and the importance of that in terms of building generational wealth in the Hispanic community. According to the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, it's a 2022 report that I read. Hispanic home ownership has risen to 48.6% and showing steady growth for 8 consecutive years. How does home ownership impact the Hispanic economic power? When we talk about, almost $2 trillion in purchasing power for the Hispanic community and the number of Hispanics living in America and in Georgia in particularly, how important is that we're seeing those rising numbers, even though there's still some disparities and discrimination in home in lending and access to funding and credit for home ownership, we still continue to see it inclining. How is that important for the Hispanic community?
Yeah, it's a really good thing that you mentioned that not a lot of Hispanics know that they can purchase homes. They always think it's like a taboo topic of, no, I don't have papers. No, I don't have a social security card, right? I think that time again is consistently changing.
Mhm.
The importance of Latino to own a home, it goes beyond the fact of saying I'm a Latino, right? It goes more into your generation. It goes more into your children and their children. And then it goes back into you will be their ancestors one day. And they're gonna thank you for making these decisions that you've made that were a little challenging for you in the moment to make them. The opportunity is a lot easier than it was back then. So now a Latino will have some that come from other countries either don't have a social security, they'll have tax IDs. They'll either have a lot of work and they save up all their money. They don't save it up, in a bank account, they save them up in cash. Being in a male American dominant business helps me learn so much so that I can continuously educate other people in our industry or in our community. They'll get to learn and understand that if you don't have those documents, you can still get a loan. If you don't have those documents and for example, your credit, you can still get a credit with tax ID. Not a lot of people know that. And yes, it does require a higher down payment, but it's still available for you. There's still an opportunity. And then there's times where there's clients who just have a lot of money and they just don't want to borrow money. And I also have information and the right connections for them to purchase the home in cash. You don't need to have a social security or tax ID, and I can help you get a house in cash. And they're surprised, like, wow, what did you just unleash gold? And it's unfortunate, but it's a good thing that there's us, our generation, our community that's here to teach them that. And I think that it's going to continue to rise. I don't think that it's ever going to decline because this one small opportunity is going to lead to a bigger opportunity. And to be honest, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, they buy a house and they rent them. They're homeowners and they rent them. I have several Latinos that they're already on their third house because we taught them how to take equity out of their house. We taught them how to rent their house to someone else so that they can purchase another one. We taught them how to purchase a vacation home. We taught them how to, purchase a second home or an investment property, or even land, how to buy land and sit on it and not do anything with it, because that will eventually turn into profit for your children when they get older. You don't have to give it to them. You can just cash it out, sell it, and give them the money if they need it for school, if they need it for medical, whatever the case may be. And it goes more, beyond just housing. It goes into financial literacy for, insurance and, life insurance, death insurance, and a will, and all these things that they just don't understand or know. We're able to teach them now. And I'm glad that I got into this industry because I'm only 34 years old. And this industry is, one, more dominant in male, and two, a lot of older people, a lot of older, most of my coworkers are older. And I sometimes go to these meetings and I'm like, well, I'm actually really proud that I'm here because I get to bring in more people that are my age, in my age group, and help them educate more people as well. So I think it's just going to continuously grow from here on.
Yes, ma'am. And it is great. It's a blessing to learn that at a young age, you didn't just learn it at 34. It was a progression from being younger than 24 and coming to where you are now as a 34-year-old Latina. and operating in this space
Correct.
successfully as you are, right? And
Correct. It all started from my mom leaving Brooklyn, New York, from an apartment, from people, you know, stabbing and killing each other in front of my steps, to moving to Long Island in our own home, and my dad building the countertops, the granite countertops, putting the tiles in the shower, you know, all those little details, me watching that. My dad started his own business with my uncle where they would repair, you know, and little repairs around the house, or do our neighbor's house, doing lawn. Those are the little things that slowly but surely progressed and got me to where I am. And I think, again, God has a phenomenal purpose in everything and has a little space for everything. Basically, the puzzle, life is a puzzle.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we got to fit all the pieces together. Thank you. And Ms. Nury, you know, you're not only just an educator, but you operate in the literacy space, right? You run a publishing company, 1010 Publishing. And I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about 1010 Publishing, your work in literacy, and its impact and importance on Latin youth. Because again, in this space, you are building a pathway to academic success and success in literacy as a publisher. So tell us a little bit about the importance of that, and also on its impact on Latin youth.
Okay, thank you so much. Before we go, though, I just want to make one tiny comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I feel like it's a misunderstanding by the masses of the population in the country. I just want to note that only about 13% of the 62 million and more Latinos in this country are undocumented. The majority of us are documented.
Okay.
And I feel like sometimes people misunderstand, and I just wanted to clear that up before I went on.
Thank you.
I actually launched 1010 Publishing because about 10 years ago, when I had a story in mind, I thought, I'm going to go to the publishers and see if I can get the story published. And they told me in the nicest way possible. They weren't rude or anything. They said, Latino families parents do not buy books, and they're not going to buy books in Spanish. And so, you know, I knew that was wrong. My parents actually went back to Peru, and when they went, they used to bring us books in Spanish. So I knew that was wrong because, again, categorizing. And so went through a couple of other challenges about, you know, maybe we could do this story, but we'd have to change the characters, you know, because the characters, I guess, were too brown, and they wanted to streamline it better. And I thought a lot about it, very perplexed about the whole process. It was a very new thing for me. But met with a, you know, literary attorney and was guided, etc. And so I basically invested my own money. A lot of Latinos do that. You know, we don't get a lot of loans. Sometimes we invest on our own money. So I invested my own money and started 1010 Publishing, not only to provide a tiny bit of additional resources in print media that reflected my community, because children, like Brenda said, it's easier for someone to see themselves if they're represented, right? And the same kind of philosophy goes with books and movies, etc. So I started the company because I wanted to do the books my way, right? I wanted to have final say so on what the characters look like, and that the books were bilingual, etc. And so I did that, and in doing so, I've been able to open the doors for additional diverse authors to share their stories. And it's a beautiful thing, right? Because immigration is not linear. There are so many different variations of an immigration story, whether it's to the U.S. or outside the U.S. And to me, that's been an amazing thing. Not all the stories are about immigration, but there are a couple, and those aren't even the same, right? They have nothing like literally in common except the term immigration. And so that's been great. And as an educator, and others that are not in education also know that literacy is the #1 variable in determining someone's success. And in recent polls, we've known that 57% of adults between 17 and 74 can't read past grade 6. And
Mhm.
so when we're talking about whether it's politics, right, critical thinking skills and finding your own information and research, whether it's school, whether it's advancing your K-12 journey, entrepreneurship, et cetera, whatever we're talking about, we know that literacy is an important component. And so for me, it's very important to not only promote the representation, and the culture, et cetera, but also literacy in general. And I always encourage parents to read to their kids in Spanish and or whatever other language they know, as an immigrant. Be proud of your other language, promote it, read it, talk to your kids in that language. They're going to get English, trust me, in school. They'll be fine. I turned out fine, so they'll be fine as well. And so just helping parents, again, champion their strengths, promote what they bring to the table. And again, being bilingual and being biliterate is one of those key components.
Yes, definitely. It's really important, especially for the young people, growing up in a home. And I tell you, many homes, many folks know about my political background. And I go to so many different homes when I'm canvassing, and I can show up to many Hispanic homes where the children are very well versed in English, but the parents are not. And they're the ones that usually helps me with the translation. So that is very important, the literacy, and also the embracing the language and being, just being proud of who you are as a Latino, right? Or as a Latina, or and representing your Peruvian culture or Puerto Rican culture or Mexican culture, and just being proud of who you are. But there's nothing wrong with that. Yes. And Councilwoman Marlene Taylor-Crawford, I know you're also in the education space. So tell us a little bit about your involvement as an educator and also being in the social activism space. I know you did a lot of that. That was an extensive background before you ran for office.
Okay, thank you for your question. So let's talk a little bit about social activism and how I got started. So when my dad came to this country, he was very much into politics. And he actually he started as a volunteer with the congressman in Brooklyn, New York, the late Congressman Major Owens.
Yes.
And from that experience, just starting off as a volunteer, he actually became the deputy director of the office. And he served on many different boards, committees, all of that in New York City. And his main focus was on immigration. That was something that he was extremely passionate about. My dad spoke several languages, of course, Spanish, his first language, English, French, Creole, French, and Jamaican Patois. So because of the languages that he spoke, he was able to communicate with people from many different diverse backgrounds. So that's just to underscore what Nury said. It's extremely important. So as a young child, we were expected to get involved in the community. You went to school, education was paramount. Our faith walk was very paramount, but volunteering, giving back in the community was absolutely expected for us to do.
Yes.
So I used to volunteer at his office. And then when I became an adult, I got involved in the PTA, different boards, tenant association, doing different things. So it just started to come naturally. And when I moved to Georgia, I certainly was not going to stop what I started a long time ago. And when you get involved in community activism, it's so important to inspire other people to get involved as well, especially young people, because we have to pass the torch on. Other people have to do the work and grow the work that's being done already. So some of the things that I stood for here in Gwinnett County was voting rights. Also, the preservation of African-American history and culture as president of the United Ebony Society of Gwinnett County. Also preserving the segregated school, Hooper Renwick School, which is now going to be a library. It took a grassroots efforts to preserve the school. Also, there's a historical marker downtown Lawrenceville that we had to make people be aware of the lynching that took place downtown Lawrenceville. Mr. Charles Hill back in 1911.
Mhm.
So it's really important for people to know that you have to get involved in your community. You have to get a voice. And I work with so many students. Most of my students who I work with, like Nury said, they're documented, not undocumented. So it takes a lot of patience to educate people on the misconceptions, the misperceptions that they have when it comes to immigrants in this country. Oh, it takes a lot of work, but we have to continue to educate. So when I worked at Discovery High School, I had a first generation club in order for students who are going to be first gen going to college, for them to understand the process of what does that mean. So even parents who were born and raised in this country, when you talk about FAFSA, student loans, this and that,
Mhm.
scholarships, they don't know what you're talking about. So just compound that with someone who is not born in this country and trying to navigate that space. So that was really, really important to me, to make sure that our immigrant children understood that they can continue when they graduate from high school to go on to college, apprenticeship program, that it just does not stop after high school.
Yes.
So that's really important too. And just educating people about the opportunities that are here in this country, because education was so paramount in my family. My parents would always talk about growing up poor, and they came to this country for a better life, a better opportunity. And I remind the students that I work with that, you know, you can make a big difference in your future, not just for you, but for generations to come. Think about why your parents came to this country. What did they sacrifice coming to this country?
Mhm.
Although my parents were in this country, we still had to make sure that we were taking care of our family members back home. That was the expression that was used, back home. So my mother would ship a barrel. And, you know, it was difficult to do that, to shipping things to Cuba because of the embargo, but to Jamaica, so I saw that as a young child.
Mhm.
We're here in this country, but we don't forget where we came from, and we're not leaving anyone behind. So we still have to take care of family members. So all of that helped to shape who I am today, being empathetic, understanding that we leaned on the shoulders of others before us, and seeing not just this time and space, but in the future. What can we do to help future generations? And one way to do that is through education.
Right. And, you know, in your comments, I want to acknowledge the first Latina on the U.S. Supreme Court, Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And I remember when she was being confirmed, she said, she grew up in the Bronx, New York, and she said much of her experience and background helped to shape her and the woman that she became, right? So when you talk about the things that you've seen and the experiences that you had, and what the expectations were growing up in your household, helped to shape the activist that you are, you know, today. The concern, the innate concern that you have for people, and you have for people's welfare, right? And these are the things that have, and along with other things that have really shaped you as a leader in our community.
And I would like to add, in most Latino cultures, giving family is very important. Family, you don't do anything without thinking about your family. So it's not just, you know, it's you and your immediate family. No, it's the extended family as well. So growing up, my father sent for this is the terminology that's used, so many of you understand what I'm saying. He was able to send for my grandmother, his mother, in Cuba, and she helped to raise us. And that was something that was, you know, very common. Your grandmother lived in the house with you, or even family members, if they were unable to take care of another family member, they would send them to live with an aunt, an uncle. So that was very common. There was no disgrace involved in that. Oh, why are you giving your child away? That wasn't the mentality. It was like, okay, you're going to stay here so that you can have an opportunity to do this and do that. So I see a lot of differences when it comes to culture and some of the understanding and misunderstandings.
That's right. And we thank you so much for your service. We thank you so much for all you do in our community. Really appreciate it. And Honorable Brenda Lopez, what is it to be Mexican as part of the Hispanic heritage and Hispanic culture? What is it to be Mexican?
Why we talk about the ethnic racial backgrounds, particularly with nationalities, is that being Mexican is part of thousands of years of civilizations from past. It is not the current geopolitical map that is in our current in our current drawing. So my about just 100 years ago or 200 years ago, when we talk about sort of this country, I see that I come from a background of civilizations that have long existed in this hemisphere for thousands and thousands of years, and the technology that they held, the cultural relevances that they held, their own spiritual, religious practices that are not what we see in modern day, quote unquote, Mexico or modern day Mexicans. And I think about even the architecture and the buildings that, now many of us across the world will visit ruin sites of whether it be pyramids or just places of that were built, that even with modern day technology, our current engineers could not replicate, if they tried, not with the precision. And so that's what I think about when I think of being of Mexican background. When I think of Mexican culture and history, I think about the fact that, I come from a descendancy of individuals that were the cradle of civilization in this hemisphere.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll get back to now. Is Rosemary still with us? Or has she left? She's probably left, yeah, because she told me that she was gonna just give me 45 minutes because she really has to dash to a meeting. And she'll just give us some contributions for tonight. So I want to get back to Ms. Nury, and I'm really enjoying the conversation this evening so far. I really love the quality of topics and discussion. As we celebrate Hispanic heritage, I want to get to this. I want to get to this whole identity of Latinx. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Are you referring to like the difference, or
Well,
how we arrived to Latinx?
How did we arrive to Latinx? Because I know with older Hispanic folks, they don't really identify with the X behind the word, right? So, for sake of inclusiveness and all of these things that we're talking about today, just tell me a little bit about how did we get to Latinx?
Yeah, it's a personal view, right? There's not any data to support it, but I see two ends to this. On one end is that's not the Spanish language, right? So a professor in a university that was not of Latino or Hispanic descent decided to create this variation of a term in a language that myself and my community speaks, and implemented and put it out there in the world, and other people adopted it, etc. Now, you're right that there are younger people, but not all, right? But there are younger people that do feel more included, right? When you put the X behind it, and language does evolve. So all of those tiny variables, do have a place in the conversation. But for me, I personally am a Latina. When I'm in a group with men and women of the same ethnicity, then we are Latinos, because that is just proper Spanish.
Right. Right.
But at the same time, if it makes someone feel more comfortable, if it makes you happy, I'm happy, right? If they want to be addressed as Latinx, I have zero problem with addressing someone the way they want to be addressed. I just don't have, I have preference for myself, but whatever preference other people have, I
Right.
respect it. I don't,
Right.
there's just like, I don't really think that should be an issue, but I know that people do raise that issue, and they have, made sure that they were heard about their opposition to the term.
Right.
But that's how I feel about it. I just, especially because I live in a world of children, there's like bigger wars and battles to fight. That really is not one for me. It really isn't.
Exactly. And I want to talk about, because you mentioned in your bio, and I've saw it you being a transformational leader in education and in that space. And how are you? I know you have your literacy program, your literary works, but how else are you complementing those to really transform the way in which young people are being educated or being taught?
Yeah. So one of those things definitely is building those bridges that I mentioned earlier and helping other people learn, right? So not only do we have to teach ourselves and our children how to celebrate what we bring to the table, but helping other people learn about us and helping them see that these are things to be celebrated about. So instead of coming from a judgment zone and like, how dare they don't, or they're trying to exclude me, how do we help people see that the things that we bring to the table and help them, Now, if they refuse to, then that's on them too. But for me, it's always about how do I help people have the information so that they too can learn. And it's not just other people that are not Latino, because many times within our own culture, we have to empower and we have to teach and help people see that they have strengths and what they bring to the table as well. But I feel like that would be relevant to any community. I don't think it's just like a sole thing that Latinos have to worry about. I feel like all of us have areas of growth as sole individuals and as well as as a community.
Thank you. And Honorable Taylor-Crawford, Councilwoman, I want to ask, why is it that Latinas still struggle for equality and inclusiveness recognition in many spaces? And do you feel pressure as a Cuban, a Latina born to Cuban parents, right? Do you feel pressure to really fit in and identify, in your space?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, I think like the same reasons why people of color face many challenges in this country because of all the barriers, lack of access to information. The panelist who was on earlier, Rosemary, she talked about in terms of banking and purchasing homes, the lack of knowledge, and just unfortunately, racism, prejudice, everything all the isms that hold people back, not just because of culture and race, because of gender and every other thing. So I think that's one of the issues, and just people being so uneducated when it comes to understanding the Latin culture experience and just making assumptions and not trying to learn and educate themselves. So that's so complex, very systemic in terms of if you peel back the layers and what's happening for generations and generations. We're not just talking about now, even the way the immigration system is set up, that there's some major issues right there. So the laws that are passed to hold people behind. So it's very, it's by design in a lot of ways, and we just have to break those barriers down.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, the language, that can be a factor as well. But I would not say that's the main obstacles.
Right.
So as far as the question that you asked about myself, I guess for me, it was like trying to fit into these different cultures, you know, being born in the United States and having my African-American friends, and then having my Caribbean friends, and just trying to fit in. And, you know, when you're around certain friends, you speak a certain way, you can express yourself a little differently. And then when you're around your other friends, and then coming home, the expectations at home, just trying to bring everything together, but at the same time, just being who I am and making sure that I'm making the spaces in the room that I need to be in. Because like I said, it's not just about me, it's about people beyond myself. So people that I will not even meet and know that I can make a positive impact on their life. So we just have to continue to make sure we have access and break down all the barriers that are preventing us. And education is so important because you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And what you don't know can absolutely hurt you if you're not educated about finding out. So,
Right.
and not having a selfish, not to be a selfish person. So that's one thing that I'm not. It's never about me. Titles mean nothing. It's about doing the work.
Right. It's about the
I mean, titles are important. Let me just clarify that. But if you don't do the work and you have the title, it means nothing.
Right. Exactly.
Because you cannot have the title and do more work than the person having the title.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So we have to address everything that's holding us back and make sure that we are very committed to the cause that we're fighting. So you can't just start something and stop it. You have to continue to press on, press on.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And Honorable Brenda Lopez, I just want to talk about your law practice, because I know you're involved in representation, legal representation in different social issues. And as a part of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, you advocate for these issues in the Latino and Mexican community in Georgia. Can you tell us a little bit about what are some of these concerns and challenges that you face as an attorney representing families or individuals?
Yeah, so currently I'm assistant district attorney at the Gwinnett, what we call Gwinnett Judicial Circuit. And so the district attorney's office, our DA, Patsy Austin Gadsden, when she came in, brought me on board in would now be 2020, and to work on areas of policy and programs around restorative justice, taking a look and making sure that we can more adequately address issues of over-incarceration. Although, and despite the fact that the district attorney's office, in fact, prosecutes felony cases, I'm not part of any trial division specifically. I am helping across different policy programs and accountability courts. Which include, for Gwinnett purposes, we have a veterans, a drug court, a mental health court. But that being said, to your question about by the short acronym we call AILA, was prior to being at the DA's office, I did have my own practice for about 10 years doing immigration matters. And AILA is basically like the bar association for immigration attorneys that are practicing in that area. And so I was heavily involved with them even while I was a law student, because at the time we were still pushing for, and over the years, I've had different degrees of involvement in pushing the DREAM Act for the young people that happen to be undocumented but have grown up in the country to be able to find a way to become eventually U.S. citizens. And so that's how I got started with AILA as a law student working in that capacity. Over the years, of course, when DACA, which is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, was instituted under the Obama administration, I worked as an attorney on a volunteer basis to do a lot of DACA clinics to try to provide legal services of either low cost or pro bono, or without cost, to especially immigrant communities. Yes, Latino students were a large number of them, but we worked heavily, for example, with the Asian Americans Advancing Justice, with a lot of the AAPI communities. Obviously, as we mentioned about Gwinnett County, we have a large, in Georgia, but especially in Gwinnett County and DeKalb, a large African diaspora. So So students from across the world, right, that would be eligible for DACA, but didn't have the financial ability to pay for legal services. So I've done a lot of work with organizing DACA clinics with AILA. And then generally over the years, we've also pushed a lot comprehensive immigration reform. Of course, that hasn't gone anywhere in the last 20 years, regardless of who's been in the administration, who has had the majority in our federal Congress. But we also understand that, you know, for those of us that start doing advocacy for a long time, we understand that legislative change takes a long time. And that's been true for a lot of the major legislation that we've ever seen in this country that has been really significant, or has had a significant impact in society. And so those are the three, I guess, cornerstones of things that I've worked with AILA. But at both, as I mentioned, since I started as a law student through then practicing, and that I continue to do off and on in the as best capacity I can while I'm at the DA's office.
Right, that's great, and that's significant work that you're doing. You know, in addition to that, I just want to mention, I mentioned earlier in my introduction that I've been volunteering with the Latin America Association for about 16 years. They do a lot of advocacy work for Hispanic families. I just want to, you know, drop the phone number for anybody who might be listening, and get this information. The Latin America Association is at 2750 Buford Highway. The number is 404-480-7357. And any service that anyone may need, you know, for Hispanic families, you know, you can definitely contact them and get any information and get support. I've been there working as a volunteer with the LAA when they had attorneys and they were doing immigration sessions. I've been there when they had career services, and I volunteered with the youth conference that they have every year. That's one of my biggest programs. You know, I love doing that. You know. And other programs over the years. My volunteerism has diminished a little bit because I've become very, you know, busy and stuff. But, you know, I always, every year, Eli Velez, who is the director of volunteer services, Santiago Marquez, who was the CEO of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber. Now he's the CEO of the LAA. And I always call up there and say, hey, you know, I'm available. Just let me know what's going on, and I can, you know, see about coming in and volunteering. But it's a great organization, has really support. I just wanted to, you know, just give some kudos to the LAA because they've been doing this for so long, and they have an office here in Lawrenceville, in downtown Lawrenceville, and you know, depending upon whatever challenges or matters that you may have as a Hispanic individual, definitely you can call and contact the LAA and get those services. But what I want to talk about, we talk a little about, we got political, we talk about education, we talk a little bit about, you know, what's going on in the social issues. I want to talk food, right? Because food is a big part of Hispanic culture, right? Brenda, what's a popular Mexican dish, right? What's a popular Mexican dish?
You know, this is a real hard question because as you can imagine, there's so much regionalism in our food, just like we think about like in the United States, right? You have the West Coast, the Northeast, you have Florida, you have the Southern food, you have, so in Mexico, we have a lot of regionalized cuisine as well. That, and even if the same plate, let's just say, is prepared slightly different across the country. And so with that being said, I think for me personally, one of my favorite dishes that my father has always made for me since I was has always made for me is something that we call mole. It's sort of like a multi-spice, multi-ingredient, thick sauce, usually made with either chicken or turkey. And again, what spices are added on varies, everything from like chocolate to different variations of nuts to, you know, breadcrumbs are also added as part of the blend. That's what gives it some of its thickened sauciness. So one of the best descriptions that I have for it for most people that, you know, were here is that I call it like it's basically like the Mexican version of curry, right? Okay. So, because it's literally the same. It's a spice-based thick sauce that usually gets placed on some sort of protein, and
Mhm.
and it's usually chicken and, like I mentioned, chicken or turkey. So that's always been one of my favorites. And like I said, but if you travel throughout Mexico, you will have a different flavor palette
Ah.
for almost every region that you visit for that one dish alone.
Right, because I know there are quite a number of festivals all across Metro Atlanta. You know, there's music and dances, and of course, there's always food, right? And then arts and crafts and so much. So people, non-Hispanics, can learn so much about the Hispanic culture in different variations, whether it's from food, music, dance, history, culture. It's a wonderful, you know, and of course, you know, celebrating from September 15th to October 15th. You know, and it's a great opportunity. Miss Nury, what's a popular Peruvian dish? Like, if I'm going into a Peruvian restaurant, and what would you recommend for me to offer?
Well, first of all, I want to tell Brenda I love mole too. I love Mexico and Mexican people, period. I think she knows
Okay,
that. But
okay. I got that
I'm a
written
foodie.
down.
I do want to say, I want to leave you guys with something, and you can Google it. It's not per Nury, it's per culinary news. Peru has won the International Global Culinary Awards for the last 8 years. So I'm just going to say we have delicious food. And I've never met anybody that said, actually, you're not right, Peruvian food isn't good. Peruvian food is good. Also, potatoes are from Peru, and we have over 4,000. And don't you dare make a dish in Peru with the wrong potato. And I'm that person, and my cousins look at me sideways. Because I'm like, it's just a potato, but no, there's this potato for everything. So yeah, so some of the most popular dishes, one of them that people don't talk a lot about, we have a lot of Asian influence in Peru, and arroz chaufa is kind of like the Peruvian fried rice. So it's very distinct. It's not fried rice like you get here in American Chinese restaurants. But it looks a little bit like it, but the taste is just phenomenal. It's delicious. So that's a yummy dish that people don't talk a lot about. And then there's also, for dessert, we'll pick picarones. And picarones is, in layman's terms, it's like a donut because it's fried dough, but the dough is made out of sweet potatoes, obviously potatoes, right? Sweet potatoes. And it's served hot. You can never eat it cold. It's served very hot, like they deep fry it, you get it out, and then they put some honey over it. And so it's delicious. And I guess I did the entree, then I did the dessert, but I'll go back. I'll make a soup. There's a soup called chupe, and it's a seafood chowder. It's CHUP. And then for the appetizer, I would always say ceviche. And yes, I've tasted ceviches from a lot of places, but there's no ceviche like Peruvian ceviche. Again, you don't have to take my word for it. You can go and taste it. You can go Google it, find out. Our ceviche is the best. 5 ingredients is all you need. Don't crowd it with a bunch of stuff. So anyway, that's it. Peru has delicious food, and those are just a couple of the dishes that I thought I'd share.
That's great. So if I dated a Peruvian girl, right, and I wanted to dazzle her parents and her family with my cooking skills, or I have Peruvian friends over and I want to dazzle them with my cooking skills, my culinary skills, I've got to be mindful of the type of potato I use. Or else,
yes, or you could be like me and just be ousted.
Yeah, I'm out the family. I mean, there goes the wedding.
Like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's a potato. It's a potato. What are you talking about?
Oh man, that's
so
great.
Potatoes are not from Idaho. Potatoes are from Peru.
There's going to be a clash between Idaho and Peru there, you know.
I mean, but it's the truth. But okay.
And Councilwoman Taylor-Crawford, we want to find out what was cooking in your household that was on the Cuban palate.
So I'll start with my grandma, because that's why I have my sweet tooth. I think we had this conversation last night. So flan. I think most people know what I'm talking about with flan. Oh my God, that is so delicious. You cannot visit someone that is Latin without tasting their flan and a flan. So I'm sure that we will have a big debate who makes the best flan, but I know Cuba does.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, in Guyana, I was born in Guyana, and in Guyana, flan is actually custard. We make the same thing, right? And Guyana is literally in Latin America, geographically situated in Latin America and South America. And there's this whole big debate whether we're Caribbean or South American. We have that going back and forth too with Guyana, you know, but we have flan, and flan is really big in Guyana, as we call it, custard there. You know? We see a lot
Okay.
of similarities: arroz con pollo, rice and peas, and
Yes,
you know, there's
definitely.
so many different similarities.
Plátanos, that's really good too. And you know, tostones.
Tostones, yeah.
Yes, things that I grew up eating.
Yeah.
Definitely black beans and rice. You can't, you know, rice is something. If I don't have rice, I feel like I'm not eating. I have to have rice with every meal. I know it's bad, but I just feel like I need to have rice. And also, I remember as a child, my father would also often have avocado, like even for breakfast. That was something that's very common in Cuba as well.
Right.
So now you're making me hungry.
I'm making you.
Everyone's making me hungry.
But Marlene, I will say this. There's no black and beans rice like Cuban black and bean rice. So I have to give you that one. That black and beans rice from Cuba, like that is the stuff. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, I think all of us have also in common, we love our spicy food.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It has to be seasoned, well seasoned. Not that it has to burn up your mouth, but we have to smell the
season. It's not so. That's not so much about the heat. It's about the seasoning along with the heat.
Definitely, yes.
And you also said the avocado. I'm like, we did avocado and toast when I was 2, so it's not new to us. We brought avocado toast out, so
yes.
Fancy here, and it was just a poor man's dish. But when I was little,
yeah.
That's fancy here. That's so true.
Yeah. Well, I've got to try Cuban black bean rice. I know Haitians, being that they share an island with Dominican Republic, Hispaniola. They make a delicious black bean rice.
And they have like mushrooms in it. Yeah, it's really good. I've tried that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the jollof rice wars with West Africa. You know, we have that in the Caribbean and Latin America. You know, the rice and beans war. You know, rice and peas or whatever. You know, but that's good, man. We don't want to make Councilwoman Taylor-Crawford any hungrier than she is now. And Ms. Nury, I want to ask you, $2 trillion in purchasing power, all right? How is the Hispanic community leveraging that to grow its local economy and generational wealth?
Not fast enough, but I don't know if you heard about last year, Latina women were the fastest, what is the word? I think the fastest business owners, growing business owners, or building their own businesses in the year. I think that they've held that record for the last 2 years. I could be wrong, but I know at least 1 year. So I feel like, you know, basically us that grew up, you know, that now we're growing up, and our parents made our sacrifices, made sure that we went to school, were educated, etc. So it's, you know, I feel like it's come to fruition, and I always say my parents' sacrifices, I was their dream and I'm living it. So I feel like, you know, slowly but surely, I don't think that we're doing as best as we can, but I feel like some of those variables that I spoke about prevent us from doing that. But I feel like, again, that's any marginalized community, you know, we have to get over that mental state of assimilation is what we need to do. No, it's just being able to live in spaces together, respect each other, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And I feel like as we grow and as we support each other, not only within your community, but throughout other communities as well, because we can all succeed, right? It's not a war about who gets marginalized the most or who gets, you know, whatever. It's how do we support each other? How do you shine? How do I help you shine? And how do you help me? And how do we help each other? I feel like that way we're going to be able to move a lot faster. But yeah, I think that the Latino community definitely is, you know, as evidence, hardworking, persevere, we overcome challenges. And I think that little by little, that's definitely going to be a true reflection of society. And as the Latino community continues to grow, it is the fastest growing community in the whole country. 1 out of 4 children in schools is Latino. Public schools is Latino now. So as we continue to grow, we're going to have to invest more time, energy, and resources to ensure that they are educated, that the graduation inequities nationally are addressed, and that we ensure that people are trained, staff is trained to see the strength and the value that the children bring into the buildings.
That's great. That's great. And I do a lot of speaking at area middle schools like Snellville Middle School. I'm about to start some speaking at Cruz Middle School. Thanks to Councilwoman Taylor-Crawford, about 6-7 years ago, she recruited me as a speaker on their the Clyde L. Strickland Center for Entrepreneurship as a speaker and mentor to the young people there. And I always encounter a lot of Hispanic young people who are interested in entrepreneurship. They want to start their own business. Of course, many of them want to go on and go to college, but then you have some of them who are they have this vision of being an entrepreneur because they see their mom and their dad, owning their own business. And like I said, on my walk yesterday, and I'll continue tomorrow through the Hispanic business community, I was able to do that with Captain Ortega from the Lawrenceville Police Department, and visiting the many businesses that we have. There's a Colombian gentleman off of Paper Mill Road, and he has an office. He does taxes and insurance and so on and so forth, but he has built a beautiful building just a walk across the street. And Councilwoman Taylor-Crawford, I really want to introduce you to him because I think it'd be great to connect with him. And you just see the Hispanic community flourishing. There's a strip mall off of South Clayton. South Clayton turns into Grayson Highway, and there's a huge mall, a strip mall with Hispanic businesses. And many of these families are immigrant families. They come here, they start businesses, they send in their children to the schools, and taxpayers and so on and so forth. And they're bringing such diverse cuisine, to our communities. And they're from Mexico, from Puerto Rico, from Nicaragua, from El Salvador, different parts of Latin America. And we see this. So when we talk about, the $2 trillion in economic power, the spending power of the Hispanic community, that is significant for Hispanic businesses to know that they can leverage that amount of capital and disposable income from Hispanic consumers. Did we lose Miss Nury? All right, she should be back. Is Miss Brenda still there?
No, I'm the only panelist left.
Oh, look at that. The spotlight. The spotlight is on the queen.
Yeah, so let's wrap it up.
The spotlight is on the queen. We're coming to the final, minutes of the panel. I don't know what happened. But
yes, maybe she got kicked out. She'll come back on because she would have said something before leaving, I'm sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of your accomplishments as councilwoman. The first Latina in the 200-year history of Lawrenceville. What are your accomplishments?
Something that I'm very proud of was going out and speaking and helping the community members that have been underrepresented for years. Mm-hmm. So that involves speaking to the Latino community within the city of Lawrenceville, hearing their concerns, also connecting them with resources, and really better understanding some of their struggles for years living in the city of Lawrenceville. And at the same time, some of their accomplishments, especially for their children. Everyone that I speak with has something in common. It's all about making sure that our children have a better life. So whether you go back 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 100 years of migration from different countries and further, it's all about the future generation.
Right.
So even if the parents are struggling and they're like, no, our children are going to do better, they're going to school. So just hearing those conversations and identifying with what's being said, because I can identify with that. So when I tell them, look, I'm first generation in this country, so I'm like your children, I understand. And that helps to foster such a connection in the conversations where they feel more willing to open up and talk more about the experiences. And they'll say, well, you're the first person that ever came to speak with us, and we've lived here for 10, 15, 20 years. So just acknowledging people and letting them know you matter, you make a difference, and I'm here to help. Also, addressing the concerns with the slumlords. And we have slumlords all over the United States of America, so I don't want to make it sound like it's happening in a couple of communities. It's all over, unfortunately. Most people are decent landlords. But when you have people who don't care about their property and certainly don't care about the people who live in their property, they can really take advantage of people, especially if they think, well, you're here legally, meaning undocumented, or you're not going to really want to stir up too much trouble. You don't want to be under the radar for many different reasons. And just helping people understand their rights, signing a lease, what to look out for, what not, what to try to avoid.
Yes.
Subletting your place, because I see that quite often. A family, for whatever reason, cannot sign the lease and they'll live where someone else is living, but I let them know, well, what's the implication of that? So just the real heart-to-heart conversations, open conversations that people will be very hesitant normally to discuss. I'm able to foster those relationships, to have those conversations, to educate, talk about housing, different resources that are available. So regarding the immigrant community, I think that that's something that I'm very proud of, going out and speaking to people who have not ever spoken with a council member before, not really even understand what a council member does. And so just meeting them where they're at and having those conversations and letting them know that I care. And it's never one and done. I'm someone that will go back, have the conversations, contact me, and help them in any way that I can. So if I had to really highlight one of the major things, it's building relationships, and that's fundamental in everything that we do, especially as elected officials. Someone can go to a meeting, okay, vote and leave. That's not being an elected official. You have to go out there, meet the people, talk to the people, meet them where they're at, and help them.
That's true. And it's even more important in the Hispanic community to know that, hey, there is a Latina on the city council.
Exactly. And I let them know, first generation in this country, both of my parents. So I understand the struggles. I understand what it's like when you're going somewhere and you're speaking with this thick accent, because my mom spoke with a very thick accent. My dad, not as thick, but just going in spaces and people looking like, okay, just right away being judgmental. And then when you tell people, okay, well, I'm Black, but I'm also Latina, they're like, what? It's, some people don't understand that. I'm like, okay, yes, there's Blackness all over this world. So
all over Latin America. Yes.
Yes, all over. So that's another big education. And so my daughter, who's fluent in Spanish, she'll go to places and she'll start speaking Spanish. And people look at her like, you speak Spanish? She's like, yes, I speak Spanish. And it annoys her sometimes. I tell her, look, this is all about educating. You have to educate. They don't understand Spanish. It's a language, and you just got to educate. You got to have patience and educate.
Right, exactly. Well, I really thank you so much. I know the other ladies had other things they had to run off to, and thank you for sticking with me. I just want
Well,
to
thank you for this opportunity to share my story and hear the
Yes,
story
ma'am.
of these amazing women who shared this space with me.
Yes, ma'am. And you know, we're live on Facebook, and this will be recorded. You know, we'll share the links with all of the panelists, and it will be on my YouTube channel for anybody to access whenever they wish to. The promotion will be there for the link, because the stories of these phenomenal women, Councilwoman Marlene Taylor-Crawford, the Honorable Councilwoman from Lawrenceville, the Honorable Brenda Lopez, who is a former state rep for the Georgia House of Representatives and a current assistant district attorney with the DA's office here in Gwinnett County. She's also the chairwoman for the Gwinnett Democratic Party. We had also Ms. Nury Castillo Crawford, wonderful educator and social activist and author representing Peru, and Rosemary Rodriguez, and these phenomenal women, we Latinas in America. It's very important for us to place the spotlight on what Hispanic women are doing and the contributions that they're making in our society. Ms. Nury mentioned that it was important that only 13% of the 63 million are actually undocumented, and not that Latinos are undocumented, because that's the one narrative that we really need to check and correct, right? And as we go forward, and as we see more growth in the Hispanic community, not just in business, but also in the public policy space, in education, in engineering and science, technology, in law, in various different spaces, it really makes celebrating Hispanic heritage even more important, because we place recognition on the contributions that Latinos are making in America. I think oftentimes we see this false narrative of people running across borders and trying to cross borders illegally, and it's such a false narrative and a false image, because that is the image that's left lasting in people's minds, and they think that all Latinos are those that come over here illegally. But no, Latinos are making significant accomplishments in various industries and spaces in this country, and their stories need to be told, right? So I am so glad to have been part of the programming, inserting myself into Hispanic Heritage Month as I've done for past years. And thanking these ladies for joining me this evening. Hispanic Heritage Month is actually comes off the backs of the various independence celebrations for many Latin countries. So we celebrate that. We celebrate Latin culture, Hispanic heritage, and everything that makes it vibrant as a culture. All right. So any lasting words? Since now the spotlight is on you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you so much for doing this.
Yes, thank you so much.
And make sure you go to a really nice Spanish restaurant.
Oh yeah, and one last tidbit. In the city of Lawrenceville, we're having our Hispanic Heritage Festival next Friday, October the 13th. It's in downtown Lawrenceville on the lawn. It's the Cultura Festival.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Cultura Fiesta on the Lawrenceville lawn next week, Friday, October 13th. And it generally starts around 6 o'clock in the evening. So come on out. We sample Hispanic food, dances, cultural presentations. There'll be vendors. You can buy different arts and crafts and so much, and celebrate Hispanic culture. All right. So thank you all again for so much joining us on Facebook. Those who were able to join us here on Zoom, we thank you so much.
Yes. And if I can give a shout out to everyone who joined us, yes, but especially to my friend Shawnee, she's not showing her panel. Next year, when you do this, I want her to be on the panel.
Yes, ma'am.
She's Afro-Pan, and she has a wealth of information that she share as well.
Well, we'll work on getting her on the panel. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we want Pan represent. I think a lot of people don't know the great contributions of Panamanians
Oh, yes, definitely,
Mhm.
definitely. All right, so thank you so much. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Everyone have a great evening. Let's continue to prosper. Let's continue to rise. But even most important, let's continue to work together as a collective. That's how we're going to move further in all of the work that we have. So thank you so much.